So yeah, basically, if we start off right at the top, the whole point of this presentation is to really give you an idea of different ways that you can apply your Microsoft 365 Copilot licensing that you've invested in, or maybe planning on investing in. One of the things I really like to start off with is the whole point of getting started with Copilot. So the whole point of Microsoft Copilot is no matter what role you're in or what vertical you're in or how many employees you might have, it really doesn't matter. And it's designed to really bring you your data faster. And that's the benefit of that Copilot license. It's not just a generative AI chatbot. It is a generative AI, real human type assistant that can get you to your data faster and help you reduce the noise and the clutter. The whole point and what you really want to focus on as you're going through and using Copilot is you want to speak to it like you would another human team member. You want to provide it a clear goal. You want to provide it context. You want to give it the source that you want it to look for, so it's not looking over everything. And then you want to give it the expectations of how that response should be formatted. So if we look at this example here, rather than just saying, hey, what's on my calendar or something like that, you can say something more complex like, hey, generate 3 to 5 bullet points to prepare for a meeting. And that's, of course, the context to discuss phase 3, brand campaign. All of this is going to be referenced across the Copilot suite. So it's going to understand, because of your contextual information, how it all comes together. So again, we've got goal, context, source, and expectation. And this is really how it breaks down. And that's really the exact same way that you'd talk to a human team member. Is you wouldn't just say, hey, go find me stuff. You would say, here's what I need, here's when I need it, here's what I need it about, and here's how I want it when you produce it. And that's exactly what this is illustrating here. When we look at Copilot, there's a couple of do's and don'ts that we like to call out. So the do's, you want to be clear and specific. So you want to provide those specific instructions to the Copilot. You don't want it to have to guess, because if it guesses, just like any human, it's going to do it the way it thinks is best. You want to ask for feedback. So requesting for Copilot feedback to provide you with more relevant and helpful responses. So, hey, how did you find this information? What steps did you take to find this information? Can you provide citations? Things like that. You also want to keep it conversational. A lot of times I see people working with Copilot, they tend to fall down and stop after their first prompt. But the whole point of working with Copilot is to continue to prompt and continue to iterate and have that back and forth conversation. I use an example often with customers that I'm working with Copilot adoption for, and I'm like, hey, how many times have you worked with a team and you've told them one thing, just one sentence, and they've turned around that entire project in full completion? That's not how it works, right? And your Copilot bot should be treated the same way. You want to, of course, check for accuracy, because, of course, it is AI. AI can make mistakes just like any human out there. And you also want to look at things like grammar, style, and watch out for irrelevant or inappropriate content that it might be referencing. You want to give examples. So use very clear and specific phrasing when you're talking to your Copilot. Exactly like we looked in that example beforehand. You want to be very clear and concise on what you're looking for. And as much detail and context as you can provide is extremely helpful to Microsoft Copilot. The more input you give it, the better output you're going to get. Couple of don'ts you want to avoid. You don't want to give conflicting instructions. So you don't want to say in one prompt, oh, I give this to me in a table, but also, produce to me a word write-up. That would be separating it into two different prompts, right? Within the same conversation, but that's how that would work. You don't want to be vague. Just as if you were explaining something to a team member that's taking on a project, you want to make sure you're really specific on how you want things done. For example, if you want the response from a particular document to be generated in Q&A format, tell it you want it to be generated in Q&A format, and it will do that. Otherwise, it's just going to give you really big run-on sentences and paragraphs. Again, checking for accuracy. You don't want to do it in the middle of a prompt. You don't want to say, hey, give it a prompt, it's thinking, and then you start typing something else and send it that prompt. You really want to wait for it to respond before you start querying something else. You also want to avoid slang, jargon, informal language, because Copilot is trained on, proper language, and it's going to try and use that as much as possible. And that's, of course, why Microsoft Editor is built right into the prompt box when you're using Copilot, so it can help you form those things. Before we dive into the specific scenarios here, which I'm sure we can go through different questions, what I really want to do is just show a video of how Copilot works as a whole, and then we can actually go into the videos here.
Microsoft 365 is built on top of Microsoft's current commitments to data security and privacy in the enterprise. Copilot is a sophisticated processing and orchestration engine that provides AI-powered productivity capabilities by coordinating the power of large language models, or LLMs, with your data in the Microsoft Graph, such as emails, chats, and documents that you have permission to access. The Microsoft 365 apps that you use every day, such as Word, PowerPoint and Teams, and the web. This integration provides real-time intelligent assistance, enabling users to enhance their creativity, productivity, and skills. LLMs are a type of AI algorithm that uses deep learning techniques and vast datasets to understand, summarize, predict, and generate content. These LLMs include pre-trained models, such as generative pre-trained transformers, GPT, like GPT-4 Turbo, designed to excel in these tasks. LLMs process and generate natural language text by learning from large amounts of data from various sources, such as books, articles, web pages, and images. An LLM takes an input, has several hidden layers that break down different aspects of language, and produces at the output layer. An LLM is a predictive engine that pulls patterns together based on pre-existing text to produce more text. It doesn't understand language or math. So, how does Copilot use LLMs? When you use Copilot for Microsoft 365, your query or prompt is processed through an approach called grounding, which improves the specificity of the prompt Copilot for Microsoft 365 accesses content and context through Microsoft Graph. It can generate responses anchored in your organizational data, such as user documents, emails, calendar, chats, meetings, and contacts. Copilot combines this content with the user's working context, such as the meeting a user is in now, the email exchanges the user had on a topic, or the chat conversations the user had last week. Copilot uses this combination of content and context to help provide accurate, relevant, and contextual responses. Microsoft Copilot for Microsoft 365 uses Azure OpenAI services for processing, not OpenAI's publicly available services. Microsoft 365 data is not collected or stored by Azure OpenAI. Azure OpenAI service does not cache customer content and Copilot modified prompts. In summary, Microsoft Copilot for Microsoft 365 is your AI assistant for work, coordinating LLMs, content in Microsoft Graph, Microsoft 365 apps, and the web. It generates responses based on this combined content and context, providing real-time intelligent assistance, enabling users to enhance their creativity, productivity, and skills while adhering to privacy and security standards. Microsoft Copilot for Microsoft 365 is compliant with our existing privacy, security, and compliance commitments to Microsoft 365 commercial customers, including the General Data Protection Regulation, GDPR, and European Union EU data boundary.
There's a part in this video here that I want to draw attention to if we move this a little bit up here. So by default, what your Copilot can do, and this is, of course, the Microsoft 365 Copilot license, it's important to understand you're not just going through and saying, oh, let me take my prompt and send it directly to the large language model. The beauty of Microsoft 365 Copilot is it knows as much as you know, and frankly, probably a bit more, because you're not going to remember every doc, email, calendar, chat, meeting, or contact that you have in your lists, but the Copilot does. So the benefit here is the prompts from these go through the Microsoft Copilot service, then to your Microsoft Graph. And that's really what this is explaining here, is everything that you have in your user account or is tied to your user account, or even guest accounts that you might be a part of, your Copilot has visibility into that. So really think of it as a one-to-one assistant that can access everything you can access. And that's what makes its responses extremely powerful, is the knowledge and context that it has. Anything you want to ask questions on that, Randy, or any particular items on this graphic?
No, specifically, I just want to basically, I guess, second that is because I've been using Copilot for a while, and basically allowing it to interact with, obviously, with all the content within the Microsoft Graph on my account specifically, and that's allowed me to be able to more efficiently correlate data, bring information up to the surface that for the, in the latter days would have been buried, trying to find it through email and everything. So prompting it is the biggest thing that I see is where most people have challenges, like you mentioned. So I want to make sure that we definitely let people know that those prompts are critical to being able to get the data that you want, as well as creating prompts that second and third level prompts of trying to improve the data collection that's done. I found that by talking to it, like you mentioned earlier on, that we are able to say, okay, you produced this content, great. The content looks good. I literally put that into the prompt. I put the word, hey, this is great. Now let's do this, just like I would be talking to a person. So I'm glad you brought that up in your initial conversation.
Absolutely. Let's look at some industry specific examples here. So sort of a day in the life of how does it look for all of these different scenarios? So let's say, for example, we're a company executive and we want to look at a day in the life of using Copilot for a specific task. So here, the important thing to understand too is Copilot has more than one entry point, right? There are entry points pretty much scattered throughout every single Microsoft app that you can find now, from Word, PowerPoint, Teams, BizChat on the web, Copilot for the web, the Microsoft 365 app, and even the mobile applications too. So another important thing to remember is you can use your Copilot no matter where you are, whether it's through the mobile system, at your desktop, or on the web, or virtual machines. It doesn't really matter where you're working. But here's a great scenario, and we're going to go through a couple of these here for different roles within an organization of how your Copilot journey might start as you're going through and trying to create something. So if we think about executives, they're going to come in to BizChat, and that's the main Copilot web interface where you see the Copilot button right inside of Microsoft 365. They can, of course, use Copilot in Windows as well if they have that pinned to their taskbar within the Microsoft 365 app. So you start off by saying, hey, summarize all my chats from the past week that mention the year-end results. That's going to be a very targeted system. And that's going to look through all of your emails in Outlook, in Exchange, and your chats in Microsoft Teams and understand that this is the actual key phrase you're looking for. It's going to then provide that system as an actual response right inside your BizChat system. Then you want to move forward a little bit and say, okay, now I want to go into Copilot and Teams from a specific meeting that we had. Let's say I went in and had a sales meeting or a company development meeting or whatever it might be. And I want to ask my Copilot on that meeting to generate a list of key points made by each speaker so I can include that in my Copilot write-up. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to move over to Microsoft Word, where I always write my documents, right? That's something that we've always done. But now I can use the Copilot and say, hey, I've been working on all this stuff that I've taken from my BizChat response and my Teams meeting response. Now I'm going to pop it into Word and ask it to actually rewrite it into a comprehensive document. So it's going to prepare a full summary for me right within the context of Word. But then I want to say, hey, I'm really looking to prepare a company-wide address for this scenario. So now I'm going to move over to Outlook. And in Outlook, I'm going to use the information that I gathered from here, created in here, tell it to look at that Word document that I've created, and I want to draft a detailed email thanking all employees for attending the end-of-year review. Make the tone friendly and mention how excited we are to continue progress in the new year. It will then write that email and address it to the appropriate people. And of course, once the response is in your email in draft mode, you can manipulate it however you'd like, just like writing any particular Outlook email. The difference is you now have a human level intelligent assistant that's there working 24 hours a day to help you do all this. And rather than you having to read through all these individual items and spend hours and hours and hours formatting this in the appropriate way, you're just carrying over the work that you've done. And realistically, if I'm to give you a real world scenario, this is really how I use it. And each of these steps might take you 10, 15 minutes, if that, to get from place to place to place, probably even less. Then you want to go through and say, okay, from the meeting recap, let's say we had this meeting that we have. Now let's summarize the meeting. and list key points. And then I'm looking for all the revenue numbers that were presented. So that could have been somebody was talking about the numbers. It could have been somebody chatted about the numbers. It could have been somebody shared a document that contained the numbers during that meeting. But Copilot's going to pull all of that together. And then, of course, at the end, what do executives always do? We love PowerPoint presentations. So we go into PowerPoint and we say, hey, let's take all of this stuff that we've learned and then create our full presentation to get ready for this particular meeting. We can even say something like, hey, add an image of an inspiring landscape of a mountain to match the company motto. We overcome every obstacle. So it's going to understand the context of everything you're talking about here. Is there anything, Randy, on this that you want to talk about, particularly for the executive scenario?
No, Dave, I think you covered everything regarding this. This is exactly the way I use it as well. Now that I've been using it for several months now, it's gotten to the point where it's becoming an indispensable asset for myself to be able to manage our company and manage our employees. So this is a perfect graphical representation on how somebody at a management or executive level would be able to use the Copilot system along
Absolutely.
with all these other applications. Yeah.
Absolutely. And just to reaffirm for all the viewers out there, remember that this entire process is using the same information, right? It's not creating new information. You're not rewriting information. You're using the context that you started with and ending up with the final presentation in the end via all of these entry points. Because remember, I mean, it might be hard to visualize because we work so fast and furious throughout every single day. But realistically, you are hopping between Microsoft 365 applications for your various workloads. The point of this is it can reference every piece of information because of what we viewed earlier in that video. It knows what you know via the power of the Microsoft Graph. Let's take a look at another scenario. Let's take a look at operations. So let's say you're in operations. And of course, these folks work heavily in tools like Excel and tabular data and things like that. So let's say we're solving a production issue and we're going to use our Copilot to do that. So the first thing we're going to do is pretend we have a table of Six Sigma data and we want to show insights about this data. So somebody sent us a report. It's very ugly. It's in Excel. The tables aren't formatted nicely. And it's, maybe thousands of rows that we have to go through. That's going to take a lot of time and a lot of data analysts to get through. But with our Copilot, we could just hit that Copilot button in Excel and start asking it to show us exactly what we want to see. So show data insights. It can be a very simple prompt like that. Now, of course, you could lengthen that prompt and say, show data insights about, insert objective here. Which regions had the best sales? Which locations were best performers? And also show me which locations were our least performers. Provide some recommendations on how I can use communication tools and tools within my tenant to really bring those up to par. Then we can take that data and move over into our biz chat in Copilot for the web or in Copilot in Windows. We can say, all right, let's find some information on troubleshooting our current production equipment across all the equipment manuals. Look for information on how to reset the processor. Now, why does this prompt work? Well, we have documentation that specifies which pieces of equipment we have, their model numbers, their makes, their manufacture years, maybe some user guides that are stored in OneDrive or SharePoint. But in addition to that, remember your Copilot is not only grounded with your business data, but it's also securely grounded with every piece of current information that exists on the internet. So just by saying something like this, the Copilot can say, oh, okay, I know that David and Randy own this piece of equipment. This is its model number. This was its manufacture year. And within seconds, it's able to go out and say, all right, let me get the make, the model, let me get troubleshooting steps, let me look at some Reddit articles, let me look at Google reviews, let me look at all the things that are going on out there and provide you that response. Then we move over into our brainstorming application, which is, of course, Microsoft Whiteboard. A lot of folks have Whiteboard and they don't even realize it. And Whiteboard is fully loaded with Copilot as well. So what we want to do is say, okay, let's put this on a mind map or a brain board or however you want to refer to it. And what you can simply say is take all the data that you've gathered from these previous two steps and organize it into Whiteboard. Whiteboard will then create you visual charts, diagrams, and if you've ever used something like Microsoft Visio, think of this as the real modern collaborative version of what's going on in Visio, and you'll see more and more evolution on that part too. Of course, there are still benefits to using Visio, but for a lot of our users that are doing this on the day-to-day, Whiteboard is a great solution for that, because then you can pull it up during a meeting, during a seminar, whatever it might be, and everyone can then contribute to everything that's on the whiteboard. Once we go through that, we want to take it in and say, okay, we had a meeting about this last week. Let's now go and reference that meeting prompt using our Copilot in Teams. So we could tell our Copilot to summarize the meeting, whichever meeting that we had, we pull it up. We have our recording. We want to see action items discussed and their current status, list all the discussions that we made and issues that were resolved. This is a really often overlooked part. So when I generate something, let's say my executive said, I need a report on this, I need a project proposal, I need a plan of action. We'll often have meetings over several weeks before maybe we launch a new product or a service. And through each of those discussions, there's always a new piece or that aha moment that happens during that meeting. And maybe my write-up that I initially did with my documentation now needs to be adjusted. So I could simply say to my Copilot, hey, we just met about this. Can you update the write-up that I've done in Whiteboard based on the context from this meeting and include any new key points from that discussion? Then all of a sudden, I've updated all of my existing information with the new context that have just come from those discussions. Then, of course, we want to move on to communicating with our team. So we can pull up Copilot in Outlook and say, hey, create an email thanking for everyone to help to identify the issue, implement the solution, include that we resumed full production on this, and limited time shutdown to 3 days. So, of course, this prompt is now saying, okay, first, let me look at what happened here. Let me look at what happened here. Let me look at what happened here and here, then take all of this into account and generate a full response to those individuals. After that's all done, we of course want to generate an actual analysis of what's going on. And what better way, again, to present an analysis than a PowerPoint, much like we're doing today. So then we'll say, hey, create a presentation that summarizes let's say we had a Word document or an Outlook issue, and it takes all of this information that we've wrapped up and then generates us a full multiple slide PowerPoint with animations, visuals, and everything else to get it done. So realistically, a process like this, if you have the data in front of you, doesn't mean you have to read through it all and understand it all in the moment. Your Copilot can do that for you. Within about 30 minutes or so, you can move through this pretty quickly, and now you've got your full presentation with an analysis report for your team members and maybe even your partners outside the organization.
This is great, David.
Yeah.
No, this is really great, David. Looking specifically at Excel, I haven't really played around with Excel and Copilot too much, but it sounds like the tool obviously is going to be able to do a much better analysis on large amounts of data, obviously, in Excel in a more meaningful fashion than me just looking at it, eyeballing it.
Absolutely. And the real benefit of Excel that recently happened in September, the updates rolling out now to everyone globally, if you have a Copilot license, Microsoft has made huge investments. So if there are any listeners out there that are really into Excel or just tabular data in general, it now has the full power of Python with it as well. So if you're running those scripts and really heavy codes and trying to organize and aggregate your data, your Copilot can now use the full power of Python to make those happen at spectacular speeds across the applications.
That's great. That's good information to let folks know, especially the updates that are occurring continuously with Copilot.
Yep. Let's take a look at another one that kind of goes hand in hand with operations, but is of course a bit different, which is finance. And if we look at our finance, let's pretend that we need to complete an acquisition. So we're going through and we're looking at purchasing another organization or doing a merger or something like that. So we've met with, let's assume for a moment that, of course, we've met with this organization that we're looking to acquire. We've talked, we've shared information, we've told jokes, all that fun stuff. But now I was so focused on telling jokes and having a great meeting that I forgot to take good notes during the meeting. Well, I don't have to worry about that because my Copilot has taken all those notes for me right down to the last period. And so what I'm going to do is start in BizChat. And BizChat is that Copilot in the web, that pinned thing right to your left-hand rail of your Microsoft 365 applications, and of course, Copilot in Windows. So what I'm going to say is, hey, summarize the information from this meeting that we had, which was our Fabricam financial data, document, Fabricam operations analysis, and Fabricam integration plan. These are documents that we've actually written up, conversations that we've had throughout our organization, and are now available in my SharePoint and OneDrive. Traditionally, I would have to read through all those things, spend hours, maybe even a couple of weeks, depending on how complex the merger is, to actually go through and get that data. Then what I can do is pull up Excel and say, let me again take that information and show some insights about the data. Now, of course, again, you could refine this prompt and say, show me insights about this, show me insights about that. But if you just say, show me insights, it's going to pick the top key players, lowest, highest, middle performers that you can actually put into the presentation. Then let's pretend you have a meeting with legal, because of course that would be the next step. You got to meet with legal in order to complete an acquisition. After that meeting, you want to be very focused on what's being said during the meeting, so you can list all the legal notifications required for the offer sheet. So this is a scenario where, okay, you've got your documents, these 3 documents that you've referenced, you've got data insights that you developed, and then legal comes through and says, oh, no, you need to consider this and this and this and that and that, and this has to be in there too. Well, again, what I can then do is come down to PowerPoint and say, okay, let me take that meeting that I had from legal, my co-pilot was listening, their co-pilot was listening, let me create my presentation from all this stuff that I had, and then also include information and key points from that meeting with legal. Once that's done, you've got a presentation, then I can go in and refine the deal. So then I can say, hey, legal told me this is what the operations analysis and financial data is going to be. Now that I have all that information, let's go into Excel, update this existing Excel report that we have, and ask our co-pilot to add another column because it's something that legal wanted to see. It's going to go through, it's going to use Python formulas for you, it's going to use all those queries for you and understand exactly how to implement that. Again, keeping in mind everything that you've done in these steps before. Then you want to go through and say, hey, from this, let's draft something with Copilot. Let's add a new section. And again, this you can be using BizChat, Bing Chat Enterprise, just like we started off here with our Copilot. And let's take our meeting team transcript that we had up here and add an entirely new section to our integration plan based on what's going on here. So it's really giving you that full picture of your Copilot shouldn't be used in a silo, just like you don't work with your team members in a silo. You're taking it across these boundaries of applications, but realistically, they're all connected because of that integration with the Microsoft Graph.
This is great information, Dave. You mentioned legal, and that's kind of one of the areas that I work in with a lot of our clients, basically law firms and nonprofit law firms. Can we look at maybe a legal scenario specifically, if you have that available?
Yeah, absolutely. If we go back, let's see.
We don't.
I don't have a particular one for legal. Yeah, it's really who's collaborating in with them. These are the ones that they really wanted me to focus on. They've gotten like very strict on what to do in these types of scenarios. I can look at
it makes sense.
Yeah, I can look at
HR would be good. HR would be good.
Yeah, let's go into another common scenario with HR. Let's say you're in HR and you need some help with hiring and engagement. And maybe you're in a really small HR department. Maybe it's just you, yourself, and you need to get all this stuff done. So when you go into that, we can, of course, tag in our Copilot to help with this scenario as well. This is often used throughout our organization, and a lot of organizations now are generating this type of stuff with their Copilots and generative AI. So let's say, for example, we need to create a job description. Well, all right, we need to create a job description for senior animation designer role based on, and if you look here, this is really important, we already have design team core responsibility documents. So what have we already done? Our technical team that has probably written this actual design team core responsibility document here, they're not HR people. They don't write job posts and job listings and know all the fun buzzwords to put in there, but they know what they have to do every day, and they're really good at writing that. What my Copilot is really good at doing is saying, oh, I know what a senior animation designer role is because of my knowledge from the web. But now I can also reference this existing document that my technical team that's currently doing that role has already prepared. So now I've got an entire job description generated for me in Word just by providing this prompt and a link to this documentation, which is already existing in whether it's OneDrive or SharePoint or wherever it might be in your organization. Then I want to say, okay, I've got some resumes coming in. The job applicants are flowing in. Let's look at that resume. It could be Word, it could be a PDF, it could be, any type of document that's out there. I don't want to read through it all because this person gave me a 50-page resume, and we've seen things like that happen before. So based on this resume, I'm looking for summary of the skills, experience, and qualifications of the candidate. I need to know these things, and that's what I need to put into my system of record. Maybe it's my CRM, maybe it's my ERP, maybe it's my employee experience system like Microsoft Viva or something else. But that enables you to say, hey, give me what I need to know based on everything that's in here. So now we've got our jobs flowing in. Copilot is now summarizing these things. Another really important thing that's a relatively new feature, you can now schedule your Copilot prompts. And if everyone doesn't have it yet, it'll be rolling out to you very soon by the end of 2024, where you can actually create automations and workflows and say, hey, when a new resume comes into our shared mailbox, have Copilot do stuff with it. So we could even pre-schedule these and have them written for us automatically when we sit down at our desk and start our jobs for the day. Then we're going to go into Loop, another relatively new Microsoft app. And Loop is basically a collaborative canvas. And these are collaborative canvas components. And what I mean by that is, think of it like a Word document or an Excel sheet, but it's just the piece. It's just that one table, or it's just that one paragraph that you're working on. And these components can be inserted anywhere on the web, Microsoft 365 Suite. You can even share it with Google users if you wanted to. And the benefit of doing this is it doesn't impact your original write-up that you had inside of, let's say, Word or Excel or something like that. But now you're able to share these different components and say, hey, what do you guys think about this? Add your thoughts to this component. And that's the real beauty of Loop. It can be done from desktop, web, phone, however you want to use it. So now what we need is, okay, maybe we really like this candidate number one and several other candidates. I'm going to have, Michaela on my team conduct the interview. And I need a set of interview questions. Now, based on this, we're again looking at that position of senior animation designer. So what I want to have happen is ask about previous experience, goals, and include some questions about personal interests. What's going to happen here in this Loop component is I'm going to get a full generation of everything that my interviewer should ask and a place to provide that interviewee's responses, all in real time. And as these are being filled in, I'll be able to see them across all of my devices and all of my work locations. Now, during the interview, of course, let's say we host it on Microsoft Teams, as we should. We have our Copilot recording that. And maybe I want to send an email or say, thank you for, interviewing with us. We really appreciate your time. Or rather than just saying thank you for your time and thank you for interviewing with us, wouldn't it be nice to be able to send some real personalized responses to those individuals to keep them interested in the job that we're potentially offering them? So what I want to do is use that transcript in Microsoft Teams that my Copilot took care of and say, give me some good follow-up questions based on what was discussed. And are there any questions that I have not answered? So not only are we saying, hey, what should I ask the interviewee? But then we're also asking, what should the interviewee ask me? And that's going to give us a great overview of what's going on. And remember, as we move through these steps, all of this information is contextually aware. So as I keep prompting throughout my workflow here, I'm still referencing the initial job description, the resumes, the interview questions in Loop, and now I'm bringing in the transcript from the actual interview. Let's say we love that person. We say we want to create an offer letter. Great. We pull up Word. We want to create an offer letter. And let's say the person's name was Maya. Maya is going to get the job for the senior animation designer on March 16th, include details on our benefits from our benefits handbook. Now, keeping in mind, We don't need to know right off the top of our head what's in the benefits handbook. We just need to have it available. So not only is this going to write us the full offer letter based on all the context before, but much like I talked about in the design core team, it's now going to reference our official benefits handbook and be able to provide that information inside the offer letter. Then, after all that's said and done, we want to create onboarding materials. So Maya's going to come in, starting her day. Well, now we need to create a presentation from the Word document to the senior animation designer job description and create an overview of the job responsibilities. So again, our last step is still contextually aware of every single step we've done before throughout this process. And now we've just completed a very complex system within a matter of a few hours, realistically. And these hours, of course, are spread out, right? Because the interview is not going to happen on the same day you create the description. But as you can see, it's really cut down on the time. So, I mean, Randy, you and I both go through hiring and things like that. I mean, what does a process like this really do for somebody that might be smaller or struggles with these types of operations?
Well, it's funny you mentioned that because we obviously support multiple companies, and part of our offer to our customers is basically we help the HR department kind of streamline or automate a lot of the workflows for hiring. So we've done it in the past in a very manual fashion, but with the advent of Copilot now, we're able to do a multitude of the things that you're talking about here. Specifically, we get engaged in the area where when the person is hired, we provide them an IT onboarding session. So from a perspective of IT, what does that mean for that particular individual coming into the organization? We've leveraged Copilot to be able to design a PowerPoint presentation saying, for this organization, these are the components that how to get IT support, how to get services. For this other organization, it may be different. So Copilot allows us to be able to design a very customized onboarding for employees for our customers, because that's typically where we do a lot of our onboarding and even our offboarding. So we've designed these presentations or these templates to show the customer what that would look like, present it to the employee so they understand how to access services and they don't feel like they're lost, making their initial, onboarding into the organization much more relevant and much more nicer of an experience, as opposed to just being thrown to the lion's den and figure it out yourself. We've started a long time ago doing it manually. With the advent of Copilot over the last several months, we've actually automated a lot of this, and the presentations become more customized because we have a base template that we can refine by giving it the proper prompts.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Exactly. And what I really love about all of this is as we look through this process, there's so much more data in here that we would have to manually go through and understand. I mean, it's not to say that you shouldn't read your stuff. You should always read your stuff, right? Keep reading, keep learning, all those things. But you don't have to do it consistently every single time. The benefits handbook, for example, might be updated once a year, maybe 2 years, however often that's going to happen. The resume is, read through it, understand it, have it on your desk, but you don't have to concentrate on memorizing every single thing that was in there. That's the beauty of what this is doing. It really allows you to focus on being a good human resources personnel rather than having to memorize things. It's kind of thinking about like when we all took standardized tests back in grade school, right? You would, memorize it. No, you don't have to memorize it. What you're really about is the critical thought process behind it. And this is what allows you to critically think and get through all these things while maintaining operational excellence through consistent data. You're never guessing about what the data is. That's what I really love about it.
Well, I'm glad you mentioned that, because that's one thing that I've seen by using Copilot. We are able now to be, like you mentioned, consistent in our analysis of information and how do we present things, as opposed to, let's throw whatever sticks to the wall and see what happens. Now we're able to consistently be able to provide the analysis of information and the presentation of that information. A lot of our jobs, obviously we're doing a presentation right now, but a lot of our efforts are presenting information regarding technology, regarding services and solutions that we can offer, cybersecurity, just a multitude of things, but being able to present it in a consistent fashion within our brand and in our voice is what I think Copilot also helps with.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Let's take a look at another job responsibility. Is there anything on here, Randy, in these three that stand out to you first?
Marketing. I know a lot of companies that we work with have marketing departments.
So let's take a look at marketing. So as I mentioned, there are a bunch of ways to access your Copilot. One of my favorite is actually using the Edge browser. In the Edge browser, you'll notice Copilot is nested right in the top right corner. And that Copilot is the same Copilot that you would get everywhere. Microsoft calls it Biz Chat. I've mentioned that a few times throughout my talk here. So let's say I'm on a web page and I come across something and I'm saying, ooh, I click on that Biz Chat button in the top right corner and I say, give me the latest information on the top 5 markets for new widgets and the key competitors in those markets with a description of their products. Not only is my Copilot going to contextually use information from the page that I currently have open, but it's also going to use its grounded web knowledge for everything current. And that's actually something that often gets left out. If folks use things like GPT or any other large language model out there, it's a great tool, don't get me wrong. But the thing I love about Microsoft Copilot is it's not only grounded in its training data from, let's say, up to October of 2023 or December of 2024 or something like that. Of course, that would be in the future from today. But it also knows what's been posted on the web as of yesterday or this morning or today, and it can reference all those things. So right off the bat, I'm able to do market research and get those things sent to me. Now, that of course is saved in my Biz Chat, so I can then come over into Excel and start referencing that and turning it into a table. So, hey, I want to take those market insights that I've pasted into Excel, and I, again, want to look at insights. And just as before, you could further refine this to say, show me insights about this, show me insights about that. But just showing insights in general is a really great way to create some of those pivot charts, tables, graphs, and things that really call out what I want to focus on. When you're in marketing, the next step, of course, is to create a promotion plan. You want to understand how you're going to market those widgets that you're actually selling and creating. So we want a promotion plan for the widgets and include 10 potential taglines that be appropriate for markets in Latin America. So the Copilot in Word is going to start writing that document. It's going to know that you're looking to build a promotional plan, so it understands its tone. It knows the product that you're talking about because you have documentation on that, you have user guides on that, your development team has already put in tons of manuals in your SharePoint or your OneDrive sites, and it knows to give you 10 taglines that you can use, and it's going to target those taglines for what's going on in Latin America right now. It's going to be contextually aware to really target that information to those specific markets. So it's a really great way to get started rather than staring at that blank page with that cursor, that dreaded writer's block when you're in that. You've now gone from, I've done my market research, I've got my insights collected, and now I've got my promotion plan written up as a draft. Now, of course, it's time for you as a marketer to present that as a pitch deck to the other decision makers throughout your organization, whoever you report to. So you've already built all this stuff in Microsoft Word and in Excel. So now you say, okay, I could pull up that document. I could email it to folks and say, hey, go read that and let me know what you think. But it's probably better during your marketing meeting to have a visual presentation that's built directly off of those items. And we're going to take a look after we get through these scenarios of how some of these things actually work within Copilot. But now I just open up PowerPoint and say, hey, create presentation from all the stuff I've already done and give it nice graphics, right? So it's going to be able to build that for me, all the slides, the animations, while again, consistently knowing that this is what I'm talking about right up here. Then our next step would be, of course, to create an offer letter for our promotional email. So we want to create what that email is going to look like, right? What's going to go out to our potential prospects and customers? What should it say? How long should it be? What should it include? And again, we're now drafting that email, which we can then save as a draft, download, share with our team, send it out through our CRM, our ERP, our marketing system, Dynamics 365, Salesforce, MailChimp, whatever you're using to do that communication can all be done just by pulling this up and say, hey, I've done all this work. Now it's time for me to actually draft this email. Can you go ahead and do that for me? Boom, you've got that. But now marketers also know that it's not just about emails. Emails are fun, they're good, they're effective in a lot of ways, but now we need to engage in social media too. So how are we going to engage with social media? Maybe I'm a smaller company and I've never really engaged with social media before. Maybe I don't have an effective social media marketing team because one, I can't afford it, or maybe two, it's just something I've never considered and my employees are doing other things right now. Well, now Copilot can come in and start writing a series of LinkedIn posts based on, boom, the document that I created earlier, and boom, the marketing plan that I've created earlier in Word, Excel, and PowerPoint. So all of those things are taken into consideration. And when I ask Copilot to do this for me, it's looking back at everything that I've done before and saying, oh, okay, let me use this and my current web knowledge to generate this information.
I'm glad you brought this up because we've used Copilot tremendously for marketing purposes. And one of the biggest things I found is the ability to create video scripts for videos. Mm-hmm. It's incredible because, again, it's since it's looking inside of the Microsoft Graph, as you mentioned early on, and looking at all the data that we've compiled and correlated for marketing purposes, white papers, brochures, all that information. When the video script is written using Copilot, it's tapping into that information, and you're getting a much more refined, very customized video script for your organization, as opposed to just something very generic, because it knows what you've been marketing, what you've been talking about, and it really presents it as a script to be very fine-tuned for that. So this is one thing I really love it.
Exactly. And there's nothing even stopping me from providing a direct link in this prompt to my LinkedIn page or my Facebook page or my Twitter/X page, whatever you're calling it these days, and saying, hey, look at what we've already posted, and make it feel and sound like that. That's our style. There's nothing stopping you from doing that, which is absolutely excellent. And you can keep grounding those responses. But again, remembering that what you're now ending up with here, which is the last step in this marketing chain, you're contextually remembering everything that you've done before. And, this might be in the span of a few hours. It might be in the span of a few months. You can always come back to it no matter where and when you are.
Exactly.
Let's take a look at IT efficiency. Actually, you know what? Before we do that, let's dive into sales, just because we were on marketing, and then we'll come back to IT. In sales, we want to drive better sales presentations, and that's the point of our scenario here. We want to make sure that our presentations are consistent, the information we present is consistent, the look and feel of our slides are consistent, and the look and feel and sound of our offers are actually consistent. So what we do is we start out in Loop. We open up Loop, we create a component, because this is going to be a collaborative process. It's not something that I'm going to keep isolated in something like Word or Excel or something like that. Not to say that you couldn't be collaborative in Word or Excel, but the reason we like to start in Loop is it's built for native collaboration. It's really a collaborative first system, and it's great for those early drafts. So we want to really refine a discovery session here. So what we're going to do is create a set of questions for a customer, a discovery session focused on the primary use case for the product. And again, thinking about that product of widgets, right? We're manufacturing widgets. We want to get that out there for everybody. So we go ahead, we've got our Loop component created. Now it's time to go and do some discovery. So we open up our Edge browser, we use that sidebar, we're looking at some pages of maybe what our competitors are doing or what's going on out there in the marketplace. Maybe we're on a Forbes article and we're reading about how the market's doing in that particular segment. We ask it to summarize the Contoso annual report, including goals, risks, and financial metrics. So this is going to be able to say, hey, let me look at this organization. Because I've got that graph grounded data, I'm going to summarize all of what you're asking me. And I'm also going to contextually use the information that you happen to be looking at today right within your browser as part of my analysis. Then you need to refine your discovery even more. You say, okay, provide me with a bulleted list of notes from my emails mentioning Fabricam over the last 2 weeks. That's the company that we might be trying to sell to right now or targeting this campaign for. That's going to go ahead and look through everything you have in Outlook, everything you have in Teams related to that organization or mentioning that organization. And it's going to be able to say, okay, I'm providing you a bulleted list of notes, but I'm remembering that we're talking about this and this. So it's going to still remember to refine its response because, again, this is all daisy chaining, right? So we've daisy chained our steps here. So now we've got our discovery done here. What we need to do now is update the presentation. So maybe we open up our company template. that we have for this type of demo or sales presentation that we'd give to a prospect. And we say, hey, add a slide about, and we copy the information that's happened in BizChat here. Again, remembering the contextual information. If you think of it like a bouncing ball, we've remembered all of this information. And we're going to include an image appropriate for the medical industry. Perhaps that's what they're doing here. Boom, you've got your slides completely added in and done following your company's brand standards. Then we had a meeting, right, to discuss it with the client. Okay, let's summarize the meeting, list the action items. So I've given my presentation to you. I've told you what we can do. I've told you what the widgets are all about. Now I want to take what was discussed in this presentation where I showed them my slideshow. I want to take those notes and get everything out of that meeting that I had with the prospect. And then I'm going to go ahead and create my proposal. So what we're now doing is opening Word and saying create proposal based on my presentation that came from all this discovery, and include the meeting notes inside of here. So it's going to know, okay, the presentation is offering this, 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 and this, but the client or the prospect said this, this, and that. So I need to target my proposal exactly around those criteria, which is really excellent because within a few moments, you've got a bang up presentation that remembers exactly what you were doing throughout this entire process. I don't know, Randy, if there's anything you want to add to the sales process here, but I know it's something we both do frequently.
Yeah, and the one thing I was looking at to kind of laser focus on the proposal, I know we've done this in the past, is where we do proposals, consistently as we're talking to folks, and we always run the proposal through Copilot to improve it from the previous one. So we ask it to basically look at the current proposal based on the previous ones, and it basically can give us a much better updated proposal for the next time we present. So it's something that allows us to kind of continuously improve our process. We've gotten to the point where we as an organization feel that our proposals are very, fine-tuned because we've allowed it to grow and be able to run it through Copilot through several iterations. And now we've come to something that we feel is very good as a starting point for any client that comes to us looking for cybersecurity services, Microsoft services, or, IT support services.
Absolutely. And I want to call out for this particular section here, when it comes to creating customer-facing or prospect-facing documentation, you can absolutely tell the Copilot to make it look like the other proposals that you've done, or make it look like the other presentations you've created. It can be set up to be contextually aware of those particular templates that you might have. Then within seconds, you've got your branding, your theming, your table style, your logos, your iconography, all loaded in simply by prompting in this fashion. So it really is an impressive system, all interplaying together here.
Absolutely.
Let's look at our last operational example here, which is IT efficiency. It's really something that every organization today, especially SMBs, are really getting into the habit of refining their IT practices. So if you're in IT, let's say we're deploying a critical update, and we need to create a plan around that for our users. Maybe we're a user, maybe we're an organization that has 300 users to maybe 1,000 users. And we want to make sure that everyone understands when it's happening, what are the impacts, how long is it going to take, what should I expect, what should I do if I run into a problem, and all those different things that fall under operational updates within the IT space. So what we first want to do in IT is create a project plan. So we fire up BizChat and we say, hey, summarize the information in the Fabricam product documentation. This is the actual system that we're updating here. We need to understand, okay, what's the gist of what's actually going on in here? Then we move on to having a Teams meeting with our group and say, hey, okay, let's discuss it. This is what's going to happen. These are the implications. And then someone says, well, I don't want that because I only want it to happen on a Saturday, not on a Friday or a Monday, or whatever it might be. So we gather all that information, and our Copilot's able to then pull that together, again, remembering this initial document here. Then we bounce over to brainstorming risks, and we say, okay, we had that meeting. Our team had some great points. Let's fire up Whiteboard and create that actual chart of what do the risks look like? look like? What's going to happen throughout the process? What are the concerns? So if you think of an actual traditional whiteboard, you would write it out with one of those expo markers and say, here's my risks, here's my benefits, here's my rewards, here's my time. That's what you can actually get with that whiteboard. Then, once that happens, we need to actually deliver that communication to our end users. So we say, hey, deliver the updates. Let's create a draft email based on the support procedures. Make the tone friendly. This is what's going to be presented to our end users. So it's contextually remembering this step, this step, this step, and then coming to this step. Then we want to create an executive update because our executives have said, hey, you're presenting this week on this initiative for the Fabricam product documentation update. So I ask it to create a presentation from all the content that I've drafted into this documentation beforehand. And within seconds, I've got my full PowerPoint that I can go in, iterate, or present as is. And then, of course, I need to go in and say, oh, well, I've got this documentation that I initially had for this product or this service, but now we're making a change. So I need to revise the support and IT procedures for that. So I'll open up the existing documentation and say, hey, insert a paragraph on a single line on this particular issue from this document here. So it's going to then say, okay, let me look at this original documentation. Let me look at everything that's happened in between throughout this process, and then update the existing documentation using all of my contextual understanding on what's actually happening. So throughout this entire process, you've now gone from, hey, we need to do an update to, hey, the update's done, the documentation's been updated, the product catalog's been updated, and our users have been communicated to. Awesome stuff.
Yes. Yeah, this is perfect stuff because again, I actually have a scenario where we had a potential prospect that came to us looking to do a migration from an Exchange server. Well, I haven't done a proposal like that in years because we've been living in the 21st century using Microsoft 365 online. But they've had these Exchange servers and we had to write a proposal or project plan on how to do this. Well, what did I do? I used Copilot. I actually got a very nice project plan out of Copilot on a migration from Exchange over to Microsoft Online. So this is something that allows us to not only kind of help us remember things that we have forgotten because of technology changes. We kind of leave stuff behind and pick up new skills, but Copilot is there to always bring you back and ground you to the foundational stuff like an Exchange server, for example.
Right. And it's as we can see, the Copilot's not just to be used. A lot of people say, oh, well, I'm going to end up creating all this stuff and I don't need all this new stuff. I want to work on my old stuff too. The Copilot is just as effective, if not even more effective, at updating your old stuff as it is creating new stuff. And that's really the beauty of it here.
Absolutely. And with the IT world changing so fast, this is something that I think everybody should gravitate to be able to stay on top of documentation and project plans and all that.
And I will say, no matter what industry you're in, you do have IT concerns. You absolutely have IT concerns. Even if you're not an IT company like us, you have IT concerns, and it can absolutely be used to help us throughout that entire process.
Absolutely.